And I'm super excited this time that we have JJ Roth here with us today and talking about relationships. I just did a wedding yesterday.
Yep.
And it was a beautiful wedding, 2 brides, just gorgeous, so
Gorgeous.
fun. I love to be part of that celebration of love.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so we figured what better time than to start talking about relationships for this week's topic. So whether you are single, there's nothing wrong with being single and happy too. Or if you're in a new relationship, or if you're in a relationship that's been around for many years, we all are at a lot of different stages of relationships, and every one of those stages is a good thing. We can always learn lessons and continually grow from every part of our lives, wherever we're at in life. And so we just thought we'd talk a little bit about that, and what better way to talk about relationships than having my sweetie here. We met each other 19 years ago this month.
Yep.
I don't know if you can even believe
Wow.
that.
Wow. 19 years ago.
19
Oh, it is.
years.
Right, the 27th.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was so impressed our first date with his creativity because he took me to see Christmas trees from around the world at a bank
Yep.
building.
Yep.
It was
Bank
pretty
one.
amazing.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
unique.
It was
So,
very nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good
we
to
had a good
keep
time.
things unique and fresh in a
Yeah.
relationship too. So
Enjoyed time
yeah.
together.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes we joke because it feels like I've been in a relationship several years less than him because of my memory loss. But
Yeah.
but it's
I've been in it for about 20. She's been in it for about 10,
12,
10, 12
maybe
maybe.
12,
Yeah. So it's a lot more fresh for her than it is for me.
keeps it new and exciting that way. Oh, so one of the things that popped into my head is, what are the keys of a happy, lasting relationship?
What makes it last for a really long time?
Yeah, not just kind of that plundering through it, but what makes it happy and
Yeah.
enduring and
Not the fact that you can just sit and wake up and not strangle the person so you get to live through that long time, but like enjoy the time together. Okay, yeah.
Yep. So I think communication is a big thing.
Communication is very important. How much do we communicate on a daily basis?
A lot, every day. A lot. And I think that's one of the things that's really made it last for us too, is that
Absolutely.
we communicate, even through the hard times. I remember when we first got together, and I did not like to argue at all. I was very passive, I was very quiet. In the
say
home I
word.
was raised in, the woman didn't really speak up her
Yeah.
mind, and boy, I've changed from that. And part of that I can credit with him, because once we were in kind of an argument, and I was just like
Shutting down. That's what she would get quiet. And she would just go, okay, yeah. Because I was upset, and of course I don't remember why, because it's always just stupid. So I stopped everything and said, okay, wait a minute. Why are you shutting down? This is the point that you go, wait a minute, either you're wrong, or I see what you're saying and I understand why you're upset, or you need to calm down, or, and this is the point where you come back and tell me, I'm upset also, or or this isn't right, or whatever, and this is where we have a dialogue. If you get to the point where you're upset enough that you have to have an argument about it, then something needs to be discussed.
Yes, yeah. And so it took, I think, twice of that, of him really pulling me out and saying, well, okay, he stepped back a little bit and said, now you have to tell me how you feel about this and tell me what you're thinking. And then I really started to develop that. Now he can't stop me. But but yeah, it's so important. Communication has to be a two-way street. Nobody in a relationship is ever a mind reader. Even if you're a psychic, you're not a mind reader. You have to
As a
have the other
relationship.
person tell you what they want, and it's your responsibility as part of the relationship to say what you want in the relationship, to say, this really doesn't make me happy, or this is something that I need from you. And
Or
then
this
once
has
you
to change. I need something different than what you're doing.
Right. And then that's where you can really start building that relationship, and you can start creating what you want with the other person. And one of the things that I believed and I really had thought a lot about before we met was that you can create a relationship with anybody as long as both people are willing to compromise. That's the other one. We have 3 C's. Compromise is one of the next
Second
ones.
C.
And so nobody can really compromise if you're not saying what it is that you want in the relationship. And it doesn't matter, if you're young or if you're older or anywhere in between, communication and compromise are so big, and you have to have that communication in order to be able to have the other person compromise. Nobody knows exactly what it is that you want unless you tell them.
And specifically with compromising, when you do the compromise, it's like for us, whether it's financial or it's where we're going to go or who we're going to go see or whatever it is, if one of us says, I really don't want to do that, I really don't think we should spend that money, I really don't think that we should, get that other cat. But the point is then it's like, well, then how important is it? So if the one wants it, how important do you really want that? And the other one, if they don't want it, how much do they really not want it? And then that's where you start, the compromise comes from how important is it and who wants it, or opposite, more, who wants it the most. And if one of them goes, I don't think we should do that, and the other one's like, no, we really need to do that. Well, then you go do that, because that's where you compromise. Now, but it's allowing priorities to take hold, because everybody has different priorities of what's important in life.
Exactly, and then that leads to the third C, which is compassion. And so when you're talking about and you're communicating, and then you talk about compromise, having compassion for what the other person wants too. Really thinking, you know what you want, of course, but then having compassion about how they feel and how much it does mean to them. And it's not always giving in, and it's not always getting for yourself, but it's having that compassion, seeing it from their point of view, and an understanding of why is this important to them. Why does this matter to them? Maybe listing some of those pros and cons, but sometimes it's not even about which side is weightier of pros and cons, because sometimes that's just a matter of opinion.
Personal opinion, absolutely.
But having that compassion and that understanding of where your partner's coming from and how that all fits together.
Well, and that's it, understanding. Taking the time to really understand what that person's about, what's important to them, and what their life is really striving for. And so if you understand them, then you can really gauge how to handle those situations.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the big things I really feel so strongly about is you have to love yourself in order to be able to feel love from somebody else. You have to love yourself. The degree and the capacity of which you love yourself gives you the degree and the capacity of which you can feel love from somebody else. It doesn't matter how much somebody else loves you and how much they continue to tell you and dote on you about it. If you don't already feel that for yourself, then you're not feeling that genuine sincerity and that love from them, because you have to have it for yourself.
Because you can't believe it. That's what it comes down to. I mean,
Right.
If you don't care for yourself, you can't believe that someone else would care enough about you. So as much as you think you're worth is what you allow other people to care for you in your own mind.
Right, yeah, and a good gauge is listening to your inner dialogue. How do you talk to yourself, and what things do you say to yourself? Do you recognize that you're beautiful? Do you recognize that you're talented? Do you recognize that you're just an amazing person? And then saying those things to yourself. One of the exercises I give people a lot of times is to look at yourself in the mirror every morning, stare into your eyes, and tell yourself you love yourself. You can give yourself a hug. It's really hard to do it at first, but if you do that every day and you just look right into your eyes in the mirror, even if you don't believe it right at first, you will eventually, and it is life transforming. I've seen this in so many of my clients where it's so transforming, and then that capacity just radiates and it starts to glow, and then you can feel that love from your partner and from other people in life, whether it's a relationship or whether it's friends or anybody in life.
Well, and we're taught at a young, you're trying to do better. If you're trying to strive, you have to be critical. And so if you're being critical of yourself, there's a difference between being critical but once if you're always only critical, that's all you hear, that's all you know. And so your inner dialogue it goes from being critical to being negative, to being slams and just destroying yourself, because you're always trying to, ideally, make yourself better. But if you don't actually have a better side, if you don't have that better dialogue, you never get to raise up. You never get to have that other side of the discussion. And without that other side, it's always negative. It's always a downhill. It's always in the wrong. And so you'll never actually hear that, oh, I'm getting better at, oh, I'm really great at, oh, look, I do amazing things. You never get that part of it.
Right. And our society tends to condemn people for that too. They tend to, say, "Oh, she's got such an ego," and especially with girls, it seems, but it happens with guys too.
Yeah.
Or this person has such an ego, or they think highly of themselves. Well, that's
How
good,
wrong? Why
as
is
long
that
as you
wrong?
also see other people on that same level too,
Well,
and
and
you
that's the
raise
thing.
each other up. And
If you
that's
think you're better than, there's a difference between thinking you're good and thinking you're better than others.
right.
Which is thinking you're better than others isn't true, because there's no such thing. But at the same time, you're also much better probably than you think you are.
Absolutely, yeah. So really think about that self-love. I'd like to tell everybody here and everybody that's watching to try that exercise and try it for 30 days where you look at yourself in the mirror, stare into your eyes, and say, "I love you" to yourself. It's going to be really hard that first week, but really just do that. Give yourself a hug afterwards and see how it transforms your life, how it transforms how you see yourself, and then that is going to in turn go in and infect all of your relationships too.
So I think this is actually a good point that I was going to just discuss. In the knowing yourself, there are usually two types of people. There are dependent type people, at least when it comes to a relationship. There are dependent type people and independent people. And when you put those two together, you basically can have three outcomes. You can either have two dependent people that are dependent on each other. And what you are, there is no better and worse. There's just accepting who you are. And so if you have two dependent people, they are very dependent on each other, and that they hold together based on that. Then you can have an independent and a dependent, and those can work out usually pretty well because the dependent person follows whatever the independent's kind of the leader. And then you have two independent people, and that's more rare, and that's kind of an interesting concept in the fact of what they call, when you get two independent people together, it's called interdependence. And that's basically where two people can actually have independent lives, almost completely independent of each other, and yet they always come back together, and it's all more of a choice as opposed of necessity. And so it just seems to be more of an interesting combination of a relationship that when they work together. But when you walk into a relationship, if you are, say, a dependent person, but you really want to be independent, but you're not. If you go into a relationship under the concept of, I'm very independent, even though you're not, your relationships are going to be very shoddy. They're not going to be based in the truth of who you are and what you're looking for in a relationship. And that's where you can have a lot of issues, where that's where you really need to understand who you are, what you bring to a relationship, who you want from a relationship. Because say like an independent person who's looking for specifically a dependent person, if they're looking for that, that's what they want. But if they're a dependent, they think they're independent, and they're like, no, I don't need you, but I really need you to tell me what you're doing. But no, I don't need you, but I really need you to tell me what to do. And there's a lot of, create a lot of conflict. So understanding yourself really gives you the basis of understanding where kind of relationship you're looking for and where that's going to go.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really interesting to watch different connections work out together like that too, and to see that dynamic. And just a reminder too that you choose what your dynamic is. And if you're not happy with what your dynamic is, then you can choose to change that. And it's all about communication, compromise, and compassion. And so you can change that. You can help the other person to become more independent if that's something that is a goal of that other person. You can't really change another person because it has to be their choice if they want to change themselves, if there's something that they want to better in themselves. And that's where sometimes a relationship can be great, because you can help your partner discover things about themselves that maybe they didn't realize before. And I love seeing relationships where people get together and you can see the people just starting to open up more and to get, seeing their personalities develop more, and then watching
becoming more of who they are originally.
Exactly, yeah. And then in other ways, you watch them kind of grow together and taking on each other's traits and taking on each other's vocabulary sometimes and things like that, finishing each other's sentences, all of that. One of the other important things I think to think about is, who are you in the relationship? Like, who are you to the other person? How do you make them feel? One of the big ones I come back to a lot is, would you like to live with yourself as a partner? So you want to be to your partner what fills their needs, and what, they might not want to be fulfilled the same way that you are, but would you want to live with yourself as a partner? Are you the type of person that you could stand being around all the time from the other person's point of view too?
Yeah. Are you thoughtful? Are you thoughtful enough for them to feel like they're wanted? Are you, I mean, there's a lot of people that it should be all about them. And if it's all about them, well then, if it's all about them, would you want to live with somebody that was all about them? Well, no, of course not. You want back and forth. But there are people that go, well, I mean, but I'm me, so of course it can be all about me. Well, that's not, well, if you put that in a relationship, you put two all about them, it doesn't work. And so that's where, yeah, absolutely, it's knowing what I enjoy being around myself.
Right, right.
And as far, well, with that as a concept, like not just in relationships as far as intimate relationships, but as far as like a friendship. Friendship relationships follow kind of the same path. Like there's a lot of people that they, in today's throwaway society, I think a lot of people think of relationships as far as people in the same concept, is that people are just, I meet them, we do some stuff, whatever, I get what I can out of it, and then they go away. And it's like, is that really what you want to make a foundation of a friendship for? I mean,
Right.
is that, do you want to strive to have people around you that are like family, that are friends? Do you want to strive to do those things? But to do that, I mean, there's just, it's easily as much work with friends as it is with your partner in life, or your family and things like that. And do you want to put that effort out, or do you just want to get what you can out of these people and let them go on?
Right, exactly. And an important dialogue to have with friends and intimate relationships is to find out how the other person fills themselves up. So are you with somebody who, when they need to recharge and rejuvenate, they need a quiet space and they need to be alone and they need to have downtime? Or are you with somebody who, when they need to rejuvenate, they need to get out and be with friends and they need to be out doing things and shopping and things like that?
Fun.
Right.
What they consider fun.
Right. Find out what rejuvenates them, and are they the type of person that feels love by giving something tangible, or are they the type of person that feels love by saying kind words, you know, and
Getting a
how
card
do you-
instead of a gift, or does the size of a gift say how much you care, or is it the time that you put into getting that gift? It could be a card, but with a really nice written letter that took you a few days to write. Does that mean more than a car?
Exactly, exactly. And so finding out what really refuels your partner. So a lot of times I think in relationships we tend to give in the same way that we want to receive. And instead of giving in the way you want to receive, find out what their preference is, what means the most to them. And
Yeah.
then,
And a lot of times, if you can pull yourself out of yourself to notice those things specifically, you can a lot of times tell what people want based on their actions. So if you're with somebody and they buy you really lavish gifts, they're probably looking for lavish gifts back. If you're with somebody that they get, they give you cards with very thoughtful written things, then they're probably, that to them shows caring, and so that's usually what they want back.
mhm, exactly. And then one of the other things that I've noticed a lot of times is when people are arguing with each other, knowing what the actual topic is that you're arguing about. So often it seems like, I think a lot of people agreeing with this too, like you're arguing over the toaster, or you're arguing over how that box is getting
Or
moved,
milk left in the fridge.
and that's
just a
not
little
the
in the
issue.
thing. No,
That's
no.
never what the issue is. The little things aren't the issue. Find out, is it that your partner's feeling like you're not thinking about them, you're not considering them, you're not valuing their ability to do
Yeah,
something.
their time.
Their time.
Absolutely.
Getting to the root cause of what the topic really is. Is it that they're just so exhausted that all the little things are piling up and they just need to have a bit of a break,
Do they need more help? Like if it was the milk, do they need more help around the house? If it's, I mean, is it that they need more time together? Is it that you need more time apart? Is it you need more downtime? Is it, there's usually, most fights come from when the your time, your ability to just let things go has been worn out. And so why is it worn out? Or do you not spend enough time, again, together, apart? What is it that they need? And that's usually, it comes down to a base foundation thing, especially if you're arguing a lot. If you're arguing a lot, there's something core value that's being missed, that both of you are missing. So.
Right. Sit down with the other person, ask them, what do you need from me? How can I be here for you maybe a little bit better? What can I, how can I help fulfill you? How can I make you smile more?
Happy and yeah, not so irritated, not so irritable. There's usually something that helps them.
Yeah. And then unplugging from technology is so big in this day and age too. So often we're sitting, across from each other and on the smartphones or on the iPads or whatever. I see this a lot with, we have a rule that whenever we're eating, there are no cell phones allowed,
Yeah.
and that's just time that it's just not permitted.
Together,
We need
yeah.
that time with our family, and so many families are all sitting lined up watching TV and in their phones, and so
They're-
it's
They're in the same room, and they're absolutely the farthest apart they could be.
exactly, which then can create that feeling of loneliness or the pseudo relationships with the technology.
Being plugged in actually unplugs you from the people around you.
Yeah, one of the brides, I was so impressed with, one of her vows was that she vowed to unplug from the phone periodically
Yeah.
too, and
That was,
it
yeah.
was really great.
I will engage you, and I will be unplugged at as much as I can be to be part of your life, and that's true. I mean, the minute you're in your phone, or you're in the computer, or you're in video games, or you're in whatever, if you're in something else, you can only do one thing at a time. So if you're in something else, you're not with that person that you're with.
Right. And then remember to see your partner as they were when you first met them too. When you first fell in love with them, remembering those moments, remembering to see them as they were then. I think a lot of times we forget, we get stuck in this day to day, and taking that time to remember how they looked when the sun was shining through their hair and they were walking towards you, and remembering all of those moments, treasuring the memories that you created early on in a relationship, and then at all the other points along the way too, over the years, just stepping back and
Appreciating the variance as you grow together, because each point of your life is a beautiful thing in and of itself, and you really should be able to appreciate that as you go through it.
right. And when we first meet somebody else, and part of it's the brain chemistry, we have oxytocin that pours in during that first, like that romantic love, and you see them and you just like your heart's patting, and you've got the butterflies in your stomach, and that's all that oxytocin that's being released. And you can still continue to train your brain to release that, but you just have to go back and remember those memories and sit back and just kind of sit back and look at them. Take a minute and look at them and think about the kind things that they do for you. Think about what they mean to you, and so
that helps with that will always help bring back those things of the when you can wash away the day-to-day and let the day-to-day stuff go, and just remember the more pure moments of your relationship together.
Yes, yeah, and just being in that present moment is
Yep.
such a big thing too. It's really a good thing. I know we've done that if we've started to get just a little irritable at times. It doesn't happen that often.
Not that often.
But when it does, then we just kind of take a minute and separate and think about the things that we do love each other. Figure out what the topic is that's the actual topic, not whatever it was that came up in the moment, and then communicate.
Talk about it, discuss it, and then find some sort of a compromise that goes with it.
Yeah, and having that compassion and remembering that love for each other. And a lot of this can apply to friendships as well as your intimate relationships too. So, and also just another reminder, like treasure whatever part of life you're in right now too, because whether you're single, newly dating, in a long-term relationship, whether you've been together for 50 or 60 years, all of this is a process. We learn from every relationship that we have, whether it's friendship, romantic love, all of that. We have things that we can learn and take away, and those people that have been part of our lives are always part of us. They're always part of our hearts. They've always changed us a bit in who we are, hopefully helping us grow.
Well, and as far as relationships, even if you're not in a relationship, the fact of being by yourself, the relationship you have with yourself, should be a time that you spend, and you should extrapolate what you can from that and learn from that and gain more self from that, hopefully.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I think that's it. I think we hit it.
All right, wonderful. Well,